Hello, Anna Riddle here, and I'm pleased to present my professional research with you. Before I begin, I want you to picture this. Meet Robbie. Robbie wants to learn how to play the saxophone. He has all of the tools he needs. He has a saxophone, neck strap, a brand new reed, a beginner lesson book, a private saxophone teacher. His goal is to learn a B-flat concert scale. The first time he tries to play it, it squeaks. He tries again and produces some sound, but presses the wrong keys. Finally, after weeks of practice, Robbie plays the scale without any errors. Now, if I were to ask you, did Robbie meet his goal? What would you say? I would say yes, Anna. Of course you would. Robbie wanted to play a scale, and he did. Mission accomplished. That was easy, right? Well, it should be, but unfortunately, when we assess whether or not students are meeting the goals we set for them, we take into consideration the failed attempts, average them all together to create a final grade. My research takes a look at traditional grading and explains how standards-based grading is a more fair, evidence-based way to assess whether or not students are meeting the goals set before them. Now for my research question. How can I alter my formative and summative assessments to align with standards-based grading? There are many reasons why I chose standards-based grading. My school is switching to standards-based report cards in the next school year. I have been invited to be on the report card revision team at my school to help create our new report card. I'm really interested in the topic because I'm going to need to report on standards beginning next year. I want to be ahead of the game and learn now so that I can help other teachers when we make the transition. This research project was the perfect opportunity for me to learn more about it and what needs to be done in order to make the switch. So what is standards-based grading? Well, it's also known as SBG, but it measures a student's proficiency on specific course objectives or standards. Specifically, I would be using the Common Core State Standards for English Language Arts. It switches the focus for our students from grading to learning and making it all about that process. It goes beyond giving grades and shows students what they are good at and what needs improvement. Simply put, standards-based grading grades a student on skills, not an assignment. For example, instead of entering an assignment as To Kill a Mockingbird quiz number 1, you'd enter the skill that you are assessing, like determine a theme or central idea of a text. This is much more specific. Getting a B versus knowing the child is able to identify a theme is a much different way of reporting progress. Before we can understand the necessity for standards-based grading, I want to identify the flaws with our traditional grading practices. Traditionally, a student's grades throughout the quarter are averaged to one final grade. Let's look at Joe. He did very well on his homework, but failed the test, which assessed what he learned on the homework. Because of his high homework grades, he received a B in the class. However, do we know Joe really demonstrated mastery of the content? Perhaps he had help on his homework, presenting a dishonest picture of his abilities. Lisa, on the other hand, had a different result. She failed to complete the homework assignment, which resulted in averaging a 0 with the rest of her work and a D grade. However, Lisa received an A on the test, demonstrating she was able to master the standards addressed in the assessment. Maybe Lisa had a bad day, or perhaps she's advanced and doesn't need the formative practice. Whatever the reason may be, averaging in her homework caused her to receive a poor class grade. Overall, averaging grades in the traditional way provides a skewed image of what the student is actually able to do. That is a flaw in traditional grading. One of the flaws in traditional grading is that it's not specific. What does a B mean? How about a 74%? We don't know in terms of learning what these grades and percentages tell us. And why are there so many levels of an F? More than half of the grading scale as we know it is made up of a failing option. What's up with that? Additionally, traditional grades can be punitive, as practice and process can be included in the final grade. In order to avoid misrepresenting a student's abilities in traditional grading, we need to identify the purpose of grading. According to Garnett-Hillman, it is to communicate where students are in relation to the standards at any given moment in time. Stevens adds that the main audience for grades are students and parents, so we need to be more specific in the information we provide in our grades. So what kind of information should be provided in the grades? To be a true representation of what a student has mastered, we need grades to be tied only to academic achievement. Things like process and growth are definitely important, but need to be separate. If all things are considered into one letter grade, we don't know if it's because of achievement, effort, failure to complete assignments on time, or if they're actually capable of meeting the standard. Dr. Tay, a teacher, videographer, scientist, and skateboarder, gave a TED Talk where he talks about the connection between learning and skateboarding. And while at first it doesn't seem like there are many connections to be made between the two, his analogy is spot on. Dr. Tay made one thing clear in his TED Talk: failure is normal. He described learning a new trick on the skateboard, which was doing a 360 flip and turn at the same time. He had one goal: to land the trick. It took him 58 tries to successfully land the trick. The tries before he landed the trick were like his version of homework or practice. He wonders why many schools grade students based on their practice. If he had 57 failed attempts averaged with his one successful landing, his grade would no doubt be incredibly low, which is not indicative of his ability. What is his goal? To land the trick. Did he achieve it? Yes. So why would he be given a D when he shows mastery of the objective? It's like Lisa from the earlier example. When we grade students on their practice, it isn't really representing their ability. We should only assess students after they've had time to practice and are ready to land the trick, if you will. There are so many different components that contribute to a student's success in the classroom. When it comes down to it, however, what should we be including in determining whether or not a student has successfully met the goal or standard? Although many of us have included some, if not all, of the categories listed here in calculating a grade for students, it does students a disservice. If grades are supposed to report academic achievement, we must separate that from the behavioral components in practice. Students should be able to fail in our classroom without affecting their final grade. The things that receive grades should be directly tied to a specific standard, like citing textual evidence, making inferences, paraphrasing text, for example. All of the other components are going to contribute to the child's success, but need not contribute to the grade as well. What are the benefits of standards-based grading? Here are a few examples. They focus on learning, not just doing. It makes assessment and grading more transparent. It creates less busy work for students and for us as teachers. Employers and admissions for college like it as the transcript gives more detail and is free from bias as it is evidence-based. So, for me as a teacher, how is this going to work? Well, my report card is going to have two components, and that's what I'm working on with my revision team. The first component will be academic achievement, and the second is habits of success. Now, when I plan, each assignment will be directly related to a standard, and that's where I will begin when deciding which materials to use and what activities to include. I will begin with the end in mind. I'll start with the standards, and I have to ask myself, what do I want my students to do? So my grade book will be specifically based on the different strands of reading informational text, speaking and listening, writing, language, and reading literature. Each assignment I enter into my gradebook will be under these categories, with a description of the specific standard assessed. Those will be the only things recorded with a grade. Now I know what thinking, what about the homework? This is going to be a huge shift for many of us, as homework is not often graded. Homework is practice, not the game. So the formative work should not be included in determining a student's success on the criteria. We give points at the basketball game, but not the scrimmage. Grades should reflect students' achievement of their learning outcomes, not their process towards success. It's simply not fair to grade students when they are learning and practicing. We want assessments to be a slam dunk for students after many different practices with the coach, with their teammates, and then at home practicing that free throw. I will give feedback to my students along the way so they will know how to improve, but I won't put them in the penalty box if they fail to master a concept on their first try. Please pardon the cheesy sports analogies. Reporting, the first section is academic achievement. As far as the actual assessments, they'll be rated on a 4-point scale as follows. 4 is exceeding the standards, 3 is meeting the standards, 2 is working toward the standards, 1 is not meeting the standards, and an NA for not assessed at this time. While we want our students to meet the standards, exceeding the standards is not out of their reach. I will encourage my students to go beyond what they think they are capable of, and they just might surprise themselves. The second component to my standards-based grading report card is the habits for success. And this is all the behavioral things that we observe in the classroom. Things like respecting others' rights, feelings, and property, using your time effectively, organization, following directions, completing assignments on time, effort, commitment, perseverance. All of these things are incredibly important and should be communicated to students and parents. That's why there's a section on the report card to identify the student's strengths and weaknesses in these areas. That way students can know how to improve behaviorally in class without necessitating that it alter their academic achievement. It will provide a more robust picture of the student's capabilities overall. The habits for success will also be graded on a 4-point scale as follows. Consistently demonstrates, usually demonstrates, sometimes demonstrates, seldom demonstrates. There are two primary choices in life: to accept conditions as they exist or accept responsibility for changing them. Now that I have been exposed to standards-based grading and how it provides a better picture of a student's academic ability, I have to accept responsibility for changing the way that I report my students' grades in language arts. This is a huge paradigm shift, and I know it won't be easy. However, I'm passionate about helping my students succeed, and I want to do all that I can in order to help them be successful. I hope you have enjoyed learning a little bit about standards-based grading. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.